Have you ever checked your bank account at the end of the month and asked yourself, where did all my money go? You work, you get paid. You're not buying luxury cars. You're not living in some house you can't afford. And yet, somehow, before the next paycheck even lands, your account is nearly empty again. It happens quietly, almost invisibly. No single purchase you can point to, I'm lying. Just a slow leak that empties the tank every single month. Right on schedule. Most people's first instinct, when they notice this pattern, is to think, I just need to make more money. And on the surface, that seems obvious. More income should mean more leftover, right? But here's the uncomfortable truth. When income increases, and nothing else about how that money is managed changes, the result usually isn't more savings. It's more spending, more financial pressure. And somehow, the exact same feeling of emptiness at the end of the month, just with bigger numbers attached to it. Money problems, for a huge number of people, aren't actually income problems, they're system problems. And today, we're going to look for rules that most of us learn as more children and never once connected to money: addition, subtraction, multiplication, and division. Back then, they were just arithmetic. This time, they're going to explain exactly why the salary disappears every month, and what it would take to change that. Let's start with someone real, or at least real enough that you probably recognize a piece of yourself in him. Coleman Victor is 29 years old, and he works as an accountant. His income is stable, not extravagant, but solid, dependable. The kind of salary that should, in theory, leave some room to breathe. And yet, by the end of nearly every month, there's nothing left. On the surface, nothing about his spending looks alarming. A new phone here, a weekend out with friends there, food delivery a few nights a week because he's too tired to cook, some online shopping when something catches his eye. None of it, taken individually, looks like the failure of someone in financial trouble. But underneath the surface, a different picture was quietly forming. Credit card debt slowly accumulating in the background. No real savings to speak of. And a persistent, low-level sense that he was never quite as secure as his paycheck suggested he should be. People around him would soon be obvious thing. You're an accountant, you must be great with money. But there was a distinction nobody else seemed to notice. And it took Victor himself a long time to see it clearly. He understood his company's money in exhaustive detail. Every ledger, every reconciliation, every number balanced perfectly by the end of each quarter. He simply had never learned to understand his own money the same way. The moment that changed everything for Harry wasn't dramatic in a way you might expect. His mother needed money for a medical expense. Not an enormous amount, just around $1,000. And Victor, a working accountant with a stable salary, realized in that moment that he genuinely could not pull together $1,000 if his life depended on it. That was the moment it hit him. He had spent years earning money. Well, without ever quite realizing it. Money had been quietly controlling him the entire time. So let's go back to those 4 rules. The ones that it turns out, we never just bother it when it. The first rule is addition, and most people misunderstand it immediately. When people hear addition in the context of money, they assume it simply means earning more, a raise, a bonus, a higher paying job. But real financial addition isn't primarily about the number on your paycheck. It's about deliberately adding specific things to your life that make your relationship with money stronger. Regardless of what that paycheck happens to say, the first thing worth adding is financial knowledge. School spends years teaching algebra and geometry, subjects most people who barely touch again after graduation. Well, almost nobody is taught how credit card interest actually compounds, how taxes actually work, or what a basic investment account even is. That cat doesn't close itself with each. It has to be actively ferried. The second thing worth adding is the simple dragon when money actually goes. This sounds almost a basic matter. Well, it's foundational. If you don't know where your money is going, there is no version of your life in which you gain real control over it. You can't fix a leak you've never bothered to look at. The third addition is a safety cushion, an emergency fund, built specifically so that one unexpected event doesn't have the power to erase years of careful effort in a single month. And the fourth is adding new income sources. though not necessarily in a dramatic way people often imagine. This isn't about quitting your job tomorrow to start a business. It's about deliberately adding capability, a new skill, a side project, some additional value you can offer the world that opens doors income alone never could. Put simply, wealth grows when you add things that make your money structurally stronger, not just when a number on your paycheck goes up. The second rule is subtraction. And this is where most people's financial lives quietly fall apart without them ever noticing. Wealth doesn't come only from earning more. It also depends heavily on eliminating the leaks that are draining everything else they're adding in the first place. Picture a pot that's constantly being filled with water. That is a small crack near the bottom. The problem was never that there wasn't enough water going in. The problem is that some of it keeps escaping before it ever has the chance to accumulate. Most people's finances work exactly the same way, and cracks tend to show up in three familiar places. The first is emotional spending, the purchase that happens after a stressful day, the treat you buy yourself as a kind of reward or comfort, almost as compensation for how hard the week has been. The second is identity spending, buying things not because you need them, but because they seem to prove something. A subtle way of saying I've made it to the world, often at a cost that quietly exceeds what you can actually afford. And as well as hidden spending, subscriptions you forgot you signed up for, memberships you rarely use, small automatic charges the renew I remarked without ever asking for your attention again. Here's what makes this particular trap so effective. Each individual purchase, viewed entirely on its own, looks completely reasonable. Nobody ends up in financial trouble because of one subscription or one stressed-out impulse buy. But add all of these small legs together, month after month, year after year, and are more than capable of quietly undoing any amount of financial progress so trying to build elsewhere. People who successfully accumulate wealth don't only ask, how can I earn more? They also, just as seriously, ask, where exactly is my money leaking out? The third rule is multiplication, and this is where the entire game genuinely starts to change. There are really only two ways to make money in this world. The first is the one almost everyone starts with. You work, you receive money in exchange for your time, and the moment you stop working, that income stops right along with you. The second way is fundamentally different. You build asset, and those assets go on to produce more money, often with very little additional effort required from you once they set up. There are essentially three multipliers worth understanding here. The first is long-term saving, modest amounts, set aside consistently. A lot to sit and accumulate over long stretches of time rather than being pulled out and spent the moment they build up. The second is investing, and it's worth being clear about what this actually means. It isn't gambling, and it isn't an attempt to predict exactly what the market will do next way. It's simply allowing your capital to participate in a broader growth of the economy of the time. And the third most powerful is skill growth, deliberately increasing your own earning capacity through learning, so that the income-generating asset you already possess, which is you, becomes worth more over time. The defining feature of all three of these multipliers is compounding. And compounding has a strong, almost seductive personality. In the early years, it looks boring, dull, it looks like almost nothing is happening at all. And it's genuinely easy to convince yourself the whole effort isn't worth it. But further down the road, the growth accelerates in a way. It can feel almost unbelievable compared to where it started. Compound growth looks boring in the beginning and unbelievable in the end. And the hardest part, for almost everyone, is simply staying patient through the boring part. The fourth and final rule is the vision. And this might be the single most practical shift of all, for most people follow the same basic sequence without ever questioning it. Earn money, spend money, and then, whatever happens be left over at the very end. Maybe, is what gets said. For most people, following this order, the honest answer is that nothing is ever left over. People who successfully build wealth tend to reverse the entire sequence. The moment income arises, it gets devalued immediately, before spend and has the chance to quietly consume the whole thing. A reasonable structure looks something like 4 separate buckets. Money for living expenses, money set aside for emergencies, money directed to long-term investment, and money reserved specifically for growth, for learning, for new skills, for whatever helps you become more capable over time. The critical shift here isn't complicated, but it changes everything. Don't save whatever happens to be left after spending. Spend whatever happens to be left after you've already devalued and protected the rest. When money has no predetermined direction of its own, something or someone else will inevitably decide the direction for you. A sale, an impulse, a moment of stress, an algorithm designed specifically to catch your attention at exactly the wrong time. It's worth noticing how different this feels from the way most of us were raised to think about money. Growing up, the message was usually some version of work hard, and the money will take care of itself. Nobody sails down and explains the Salaries. All it's known, has no opinion about your future. It doesn't know whether it's supposed to build an emergency fund, pay off a subscription you forgot about, or vanish into a delivery app at 11 at night, left unrected. It simply follows the path of least resistance, and the path of least resistance, in a world full of one-click purchases and endless modifications, almost never leads toward long-term security. So what happened when Victor actually put all 4 of his rules into practice? In the first month, he focused entirely on subtraction. He cancelled subscriptions he'd forgotten he was even paying for. He caught himself mid-impulse more than once and simply didn't follow through. Nothing dramatic, just a series of small leaks, patched one at a time. In the second month, he moved on to division. He set up automatic transfers into savings the moment his paycheck landed. Rather than waiting to see what might be left over at the end, he started tracking his spending in real detail for the first time in his adult life. And for the first time, he could actually see where his money had been quietly disappearing all along. In the third month, he shifted his attention to addition and multiplication together. He started learning a new skill that could realistically increase his income down the road. And he opened his very first investment account. However small the initial contribution felt at the time, from the outside, almost nothing about Victor's life looked any different during those 3 months. He wasn't driving a different car. He wasn't living in a different apartment. Financial transformation, in almost every real case, happens quietly, long before anyone else can actually say it. Sometimes long before you can fully see it in yourself. Which brings us to what wealth actually means. Once you strip away all the usual symbols we tend to associate with that, real wealth was never really about the expensive car, the branded logo, or hidden something impressive to show off to other people. Real wealth is something quieter and, honestly, far more valuable. Not feeling a flicker of unease every time you open your banking app. Having the actual capacity to help a family member when they genuinely need it, without scrambling to figure out how. Not leaving every single mark completely at the mercy of whoever the next paycheck happens to land. Money, in the end, was never purely a math problem, even though it's built entirely out of numbers. Money is a relationship. And like any relationship with telling, it requires consistent attention, or require legitimate at all time, no matter how much income happens to be flowing through it. So it's a simple starting point. If any of this sounds uncomfortably familiar, today, write down every single thing you spend money on. Don't judge it yet. Just find the actual lists. Tomorrow, cancel or eliminate one expensive identified item that genuinely adds no real value to your life. And the next time income arises, devalue it first, deliberately, before you let yourself spend a single dollar of it. You learned addition, subtraction, multiplication, and division as a child, and you probably assumed, like almost everyone else did, that they were only ever about numbers on a page. Nobody ever told you they were also the rules of wealth. You don't need a perfect salary to build wealth. You need a better system.